joining us on the show right now, also from Pajamas Media. I'm gonna email Roger Simon after the show is over and say, hey, Roger, we had not one, but two of your guys on the show tonight, Bob Owens and Howard Nimerov. How you doing tonight, Howard?
Hey, I'm doing pretty well. How are you, Cam?
Excellent. Thanks for coming on the show. All right, before we even really talk about Chief Gary McCarthy's speech, I want people to hear Chief Gary McCarthy's speech to the parishioners there at St. Sabina's in Chicago, where he said that federal gun laws are racist. Do we have this queued up and ready to go? All right, let's listen to the chief of police in Chicago talking about guns.
You know, I'm going to take a risk here, and I'm going to give you something, and this is definitely the right audience. Father Flagler talked about gun control, and I want to give a little test here. And this is sensitive, you know, because everybody's afraid of race. Have you noticed that? Everybody's afraid of race. I'm not afraid of race. I was born and raised in the Bronx, New York, and when I was growing up, the three biggest problems were gangs, guns, and drugs. Does that sound familiar? So how much have we failed as a society to address this? I'm 52 years old. I'm 52 years old, and today in 2011, we're talking about gangs and guns and drugs and what we're going to do to fix it, okay? A big component of this has to do with race. Everybody's afraid of race. I'm not afraid of race. So here's what I want to tell you. See, let's see if we can make a connection here. Slavery, segregation, black codes, Jim Crow. What do they all have in common? Anybody getting scared? Government-sponsored racism.
There's the standing ovation.
I told you I wasn't afraid. Told you I wasn't afraid. Now, I want you to connect one more dot on that chain of the African American history in this country and tell me if I'm crazy. Federal gun laws that facilitate the flow of illegal firearms into our urban centers across this country that are killing our black and brown children. The NRA does not like me, and I'm okay with that. We've got to get the gun debate back to center, and it's got to come with the recognition of who's paying the price for the gun manufacturers being rich and living in gated communities. On December 23rd in Newark, I was coming from a Christmas party when we had two back-to-back events. We had 5 kids who were shot. 2 of them succumbed to their wounds. And then we had 2 more men who were shot back-to-back within 5 minutes of each other. I was on my way to one when I went to the other, and I was walking through shell casings, bullets, spent bullets in the street. They were getting stuck in my shoes, and I said, you know what? Something's wrong. Something's wrong. And I went from one scene to the next, and by the time I got home, probably about 10:30, 11 o'clock that night, snapped on the TV to relax for a few minutes. And what was on TV? Sarah Palin's Alaska. And she was caribou hunting and talking about the right to bear arms. Why wasn't she at the crime scene with me?
Why wasn't she at the crime scene with me? Probably because you would never ever talk to Sarah Palin, even if she were right in front of you, Chief. But all right, so we heard Howard, we heard all kinds of things in that 4-minute segment from Chicago Police Chief Gary McCarthy, including, and let's start here, the idea that federal gun laws that he says, quote, facilitate the flow of illegal guns into our urban centers where they are used to where they are killing our black and brown children. He did not say used to kill. That would imply that they're inanimate objects. He said where they are killing our black and brown children. Have you done any research, Howard, on as to the violent crime rate in cities like Chicago that have traditionally had very draconian gun control laws, as opposed to places that have respected the Second Amendment rights of all of their law-abiding residents, regardless of the color of their skin?
Yeah, I have, Cam. In fact, I recently just did another correlation. The Brady campaign comes out with their annual report card, and because of the way they grade things, it's very easy to split things into quintiles. So you have the quintile 1, which is the most gun control, and the quintile 5, which is states with the least gun control. And as you move from more gun control to less gun control, you find that the states with less gun control have lower black homicide rates, and this is from the Centers for Disease Control mortality data. So whereas places like New York and Chicago, which have draconian gun laws, they have much higher than average black homicide rates. With the population of Chicago, I think is about 38-40% black, but blacks make up about 80% of the homicide victims. And I think it's interesting that somebody with a little English grammar training would be able to figure out that what Gary McCarthy was saying was silly, because he's saying that federal laws, which are very strict, facilitate illegal guns.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if they're illegal guns, then that's against the law.
Yes.
Another thing I'd like to take issue with him is he talked about slavery and Jim Crow and racial segregation.
Uh-huh.
Asked what was the one thing that was common amongst all these situations, and another thing that was in common with all of them was white Democrats like Gary McCarthy, who were always seeking out ways to disarm blacks.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you look at the black codes that were established, and by the way, not just in the South, but in the North as well. In fact, a lot of the Southern black codes were based on pre-existing black codes in the North after the Civil War, and the intent was to deprive black Americans of their constitutional rights, including the right to keep and bear arms. And you go and you look at the Louisiana in the 1870s, where you had, in essence, outright warfare when blacks tried to vote. And ultimately had to take up arms to protect themselves against those who felt like they shouldn't be able to vote. This was the design to try to disarm people and take away their political power. And Gary McCarthy again ignores all that and tries to make the case that only with restrictive gun control policies like they had in Chicago and like they still have in the wake of the McDonald decision. Only with restrictive gun control policies can you have non-racist gun policies. I don't get it, Howard.
He's completely disconnected from history. But when you have to tell lies like this, you have to create revisionist history. That's a Marxist doctrine. That's a doctrine that is dear to the heart of that minister there at that church. I can't even remember his name, and I don't really want to.
Father Flager.
Yeah, Father Flaky. And they have to create this alternate reality. But the fact is that what they're saying is we want to impose the same policies that we had in 1845, that we had in 1870 that predominantly disarmed blacks. And this is how we're going to make you safe. And as a long-term law enforcement professional, for Mr. McCarthy to go and say these things that we're going to disarm the world in order to make you safer is flying in the face of Supreme Court decisions that he knows about, like DeShaney v. Winnebago and Castle Rock v. Gonzalez, that find that government agencies, and particularly police, have no obligation to save anybody, to help anybody beyond a generally understood providing of general services to the public, which could just mean showing up the next day and writing a report. So you say, I did my job.
Mm-hmm.
I find this, and going back to the slavery issue, which he wants to skate over.
Yeah.
One of the big issues of slavery was this paternalism. It was the idea that the masters knew what was best for these infantile African Americans. Well, they weren't African; they were just slaves. These people were too stupid and incapable of making adult, responsible decisions, and therefore they needed to be shepherded. And we have, unfortunately, white males like Paul Helmke and Gary McCarthy who are still promoting this paternalistic attitude that blacks are too stupid and incapable, and they'll never be adults, they'll never be responsible, and it's up to these self-appointed shepherds to take care of these people. And what's wonderful in their narrow-minded world and alternate reality is when things go wrong, it's never their fault. It's the NRA or the firearms manufacturers or this evil gun lobby. And it completely ignores the fact that the NRA is America's oldest civil rights organization, even older than the NAACP.
Right. No, Howard, you're absolutely right. And, that paternalistic attitude that you talk about, that, we need to protect you from yourselves. That is, in essence, what every gun control advocate says when they say we need to ban X, we need to pass, this restriction or that restriction on legal gun owners. We need to protect you from yourselves. And when they're talking about making it more difficult for people to exercise their constitutional rights in the city of Chicago, they are saying you can't be trusted. I find that to be a very insulting attitude. And frankly, again, you want to talk about attitudes that demean the black community. I think an attitude that says, you know what, you'll never be responsible enough to own a firearm is pretty damn demeaning.
Yeah, and that's, it gets me exercised is I used to believe people like Paul Helmke and Gary McCarthy. I used to believe that they were doing the right thing. I used to believe that nobody should own a gun, that we'd all be safer. And I guess I'm a little exercised because I finally researched it and realized what a fool I was, and that what they're doing is returning us. They're taking us backwards, and I'm sure they call themselves progressive.
Mm-hmm.
But they're obviously promoting regressive policies, and it's just. And when I started finding out this research that actually blacks are safer in states that have the most guns or states that have the least gun control, it was just an eye-opener.
Yeah, I mean, so in other words, and I just want to make sure that folks understand this, in states where everybody has greater liberty to exercise their constitutional right to keep and bear arms, everybody benefits. Every demographic, every shade of skin color, everybody benefits.
It appears to be that true.
But in those places where there are restrictive gun control policies, those who are hurt the most are minorities.
That's true.
Uh-huh. Well, I wonder if Chief McCarthy will ever have the courage, because I know he says he's not afraid to talk about racial issues. I wonder if he'll ever have the courage to be honest when it comes to talking about guns.
Well, I wonder if he'll ever be honest when it comes to talking about the truth.
I guess we can hope, Howard, but I wouldn't hold out don't hold your breath.
I'm still breathing.
All right. Mr. Nemiroff, thank you again, sir, for coming on the program tonight. Great talking to you as always, and I look forward to doing this again very soon.
All right, thanks, Cam. Talk to you soon.
All right. Howard Nemiroff with Pajamas Media joining us here on Cam and Company.